Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of 5 Minutes with IEN. With me today is Bill Belongea. He is the Senior Safety Services Program Manager at Masterlock. Thank you very much for joining me today, Bill.
Yeah, you're welcome, David. I'm glad to be with you today.
So today we're talking lockout, tagout. The first thing I wanted to start with was how have lockout, tagout procedures evolved over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question in the fact that we can kind of take a look at it from the lens of accountability, which I think is a really important aspect when it comes to lockout. We can write our lockout procedures, we can have policies and programs and training, but how do we get and ensure that individuals are actually executing that correctly? And as we take a look back, how it used to be, where there was a lot of tribal knowledge that was passed down through the trades in an organization or maybe maintenance crews or something like that. So we were reliant on people creating a safe work environment, not necessarily from a document, but from word of mouth as the years gone by, and as OSHA came to be, especially with lockout back in 1989. Put really a mandate on having written documents for individuals and authorized personnel to follow. And that increased the accountability. I think OSHA knew that, hey, we need to figure something out to increase that level of safety within an organization. So let's ensure that there's written documents and hold employers accountable to that. So then that kind of forced individuals to kind of go through the process there. And as we kind of go through the years, we're always looking for more efficient ways to do things, whether that's produce our product or do safety tasks or maintenance tasks that involve lockout. So how have we, increased the efficiency from that standpoint? And I think it comes back to lockout procedure writing software. So we've started to see that in the last 20 to 25 years. And that has evolved as technology in software has gotten better. So that in itself is kind of where we are at from today. Most organizations utilize some sort of lockout software to accomplish this written lockout procedure task. And that in itself is time consuming as well. But once we have those, are we sure that they're actually being followed? So we can then kind of take a look as technology is increasing and where the future is going and try to connect that lock that someone has that they're utilizing in that lockout activity and actually connect that where others, maybe safety leaders, plant managers, operation managers, can actually see in real time where those lockouts are occurring or where they aren't occurring, really adding another layer of accountability. So it's really kind of a technology aspect has allowed us to increase the accountability within the lockout procedure writing process.
Well, have you seen the accountability increase with technology? Because as it has evolved, it seems like the evolution of lockout has also created this evolution of how people are cheating it. Is it getting better in terms of people actually using it?
Yeah, I think so. In my experience and being a safety manager for almost 25 years in manufacturing, on those early days, you could kind of see where it was still new to people, even 25 years ago. And as the, prevalence of the software came to be, as people got more used to the procedures, and I think even too, the software has become more user friendly or more visually pleasing, where it's easier for someone to understand what that document says. And I think that in itself has really made it easier for individuals to read exactly what that procedure follows. So I think the software has gotten better to the point where we can see it a lot better. We as the authorized individuals or we as the maintenance personnel, it's easier to digest and understand exactly what I'm being asked to do to shut down a machine to get to zero energy. So I think that's where the accountability actually has increased from that standpoint over the last 25, years.
So in 2024, lockout tagout was the 5th highest violation on OSHA's notorious top 10. Do you see that improving? And do you foresee a time when lockout tagout doesn't make the top 10 at all?
Uh, it's that's hard to speculate on something like that. I think, we in this industry where we're trying to service customers or present customers with options, that's where we want to see that going. That's the type of service and product that we're looking at creating to be able to get OSHA, 1910-147 out of that top 10 from a citation standpoint. So that's what we're working on. Um, I do see that occurring, and it will take a lot of effort to do that. One of the roadblocks that always comes into play, though, is the budgeting and the cost to get a lot of these things done. Whether you're asking a third party to come in and write lockout procedures as MasterLock does, or you're doing it in house, um, even if you're doing it in house, that time commitment that someone needs to do costs a lot of money. So I think the cost is one of those things that really comes into play. How are we allocating our budgeting from our safety budget or overall budget in an organization? So I do think that can be, and I think technology really is the precursor to getting that top 10 violation of lockout outside. So I do see that occurring.
Being at Masterlock and being on the forefront of this technology, what's next?
What's next is actually seeing in real time what is occurring out on the floor. People can see that my authorized individual maintenance worker is actually physically locking something out. We can take a lock that is connected to that written lockout procedure, kind of marry them together from a technology standpoint. Now, I'm not an IT individual, but we can connect a lock utilizing QR codes to verify that a particular isolation point is locked out. We can then see from that continual process of locking things out or locking isolation devices out or locking equipment out over time, we can then see from an analytics standpoint where we have the most lockouts going on, where we have things occurring on a frequent basis, where then we can kind of take a look at that data to try to solve the issues of, hey, why do we even need to lock this out? Let's retrofit this piece of equipment so we don't have to lock this out. I continually see this jam occurring and we have to lock this out. So let's try to, re-engineer our machine where we don't have to lock that out. That's where I think, going back to your last question, if we can decrease the amount of lockouts that occur, I think that's where that top 10 violation will then, kind of be a thing of the past.
Is the technology capable of understanding when something is being inappropriately bypassed?
Yes, it is. So I think the software, not I think, I know the software is designed to not allow you to go to the next isolation point within a piece of equipment until you've locked that one out in succession. So it won't allow you really to complete that lockout unless you've gone through those proper steps in the right order.
Is the idea of bypassing something because it's faster, more efficient in the eyes of a technician, is that generational? Like, do you see younger workers? Is there a generational divide when it comes to bypassing equipment at all, in your opinion? Or is it just something that everybody does?
I think it's something everybody does because the training that individuals are getting now is not necessarily, whether you're, 55 years old or you're 25 years old. The training is the training. I think bypass occurs based off of what someone would be engaged in on that piece of equipment. What task are they performing? They know individually that, hey, I don't have to isolate the pneumatic energy on this particular piece of equipment because it doesn't apply. So they may just bypass that particular, hazardous energy or that isolation device, thinking, hey, I don't need to do that. But when in fact, are they really sure that that is the case? And that's where assessing your tasks, assessing the type of lockout you're doing within this process is so important. So generationally, no, but I think it just depends upon what type of tasks an individual is engaged in, from the lockout standpoint.
If you had one message that you could get through to manufacturing professionals regarding lockout tagout, what would that be?
I The biggest message is to understand your lockout process. And when I say process, I mean who's actually locking out? What equipment are we locking out? What are those tasks that we are engaged in that require lockout? Once we understand that in totality, I think then we can apply solutions. We can apply different types of lockout procedures, whether they're sectional, task, or even alternative methods to lockout that will either create that efficient, process for lockout and a safer process as well too. But again, too, we need to have those written documents. We need to have those written procedures, and they need to be written in a way that the authorized individuals can really understand them from a visual standpoint and from a description standpoint.
Is there anything else that we've left out or anything in particular you want to make sure the industrial equipment news audience knows about your work at Masterlock?
Yeah, I think, we did talk about this, with this interview is how technology is, helping creating more of an accountable work environment. And I do encourage, all the listeners to see what types of options are out there, because there are tools from a technology standpoint, whether it's the locks themselves and the ability to write lockout procedures. Both of those can be combined and married together to create a really safe, accountable work environment. So I do encourage those to not necessarily be afraid of technology, but maybe embrace that and see what else is out there and see how that can help their organization.